संकेश्वर मंडन श्री पार्श्वनाथ भगवान चरणों में कोटि वंदन। थाना मंडन मारा जन्मदाता एवा श्री मुनि सुब्रत स्वामी चरणों में कोटि वंदन। मारा आदर्श स्वरूप एवा श्री गर्जना स्वामी युवा हृदय सम्राट श्री हेमरत्न सूर्य मारा साहेब चरणों में वंदन। मारा हैयाना हार मारी प्यारी गुरु मैया एवा सरल स्वभावी पन्यास प्रवर श्री विराग रत्न विजय महाराज साहेब चरणों में वंदन। सकल संघ प्रणाम। Hi guys. Now this is the English part. I'll start with a story. There was a 9-year-old boy. He was living in India in a small town. He was not Jain. And for some reason, because of health issues and things like that, he had to quit school. He had to leave school. He stopped studying at the age of how old? 9 years old. But the family was poor, they needed money. So he couldn't just sit around at home and play cricket all day. So he had to start doing manual labor. How many kids here have to do manual labor? Are you sure mummy તમને વાસણ ખસવાનું કહે તો પછી શું કહો આખું મજૂરી કેમ કરાવે છે? Right, so he started doing manual labor when he was 9 years old. He would go from one shop to another shop. He would help the shopkeepers, move their carts. He grew older, he became 9 years, 10 years, 12 years. At the age of 15, he moves to the house of a Jain merchant, Jain Seth. He starts working there. At their house, he takes care of the household chores. Then he goes to their shop. They had a hardware shop. And they have, hardware shop, all the, hardware materials are very heavy. And so he himself, when he was 15 or 16 years old, could pick up 100 kilos with one hand. And he would load the trucks and unload the trucks. 15, he got older and older. He was 20 years old now, this young man. And a Jain sadhu came to their city of Nagpur in Maharashtra. Now that monk, his pravachans, right, the sadhu's pravachans were so amazing. So many youth were attracted to his pravachans. And so even these, merchants, the Seth and Sethani, his employers, they used to go, so he would drive them. He became their driver. He would drive them to the Upashray and drive them back to the shop. But he kept hearing about how amazing these pravachans were, how amazing, this Sadhu Bhagwan could speak. And so he decided he wanted to listen. And so they allowed him to come, and he used to sit in the front row. He had learned a little bit of Gujarati, living with them. His native language is something different. So he learned Gujarati at their home, and then he started to sit in the pravachans. 4 months went by. The monsoon season, right, the Chaturmas ended, and the sadhu was ready to go. And this young man decided, I also want to go with him. His home said, we're not Jain, we're Kabir Panthi. We don't, if you want, we have our own sons, we have our own sadhus, you can go with them. He said, no, I like this sadhu. I like his virtues, I like what he says. His philosophy makes a lot of sense to me. If I go, I'll go with him. And so he left. They walked from Nagpur to Kolkata. And in Kolkata, it had not even been 1 year since he had met this sadhu. And he asked for his diksha. And he got diksha. He didn't even know, many kids here know, like Vanditu, right, how to do puja. He had barely done puja a handful of times in his life. Remember, he was not Jain, so growing up he never learned. He didn't even learn Vanditu. Or, he learned very few sutras. But he got diksha. Fast forward 35 years. And that sadhu became my guru. See, growing up, I was just like you guys saw, right? All those different hobbies and, studying and all those things. But going to Pathshala. But then came the time for college. You know why college is fun? Because you don't have to be at home. And now your parents don't wake you up at 6 in the morning to get ready, quickly take a shower, go do puja, and go sit for study class. None of that. And so now I felt free. It's good, this is fun. You just have to wake up at 6, but that's for class. And so at that point, I actually started moving away from Jainism. Because for whatever they had taught me, right, even at Pathshala, there were many things that never didn't make sense to me. I would hear, about how Jains, how our diet or how our lifestyle should be. But then I didn't see our own, Jain lead, our, community leaders following the same thing. I didn't see, even in my own household many times, my parents, because my parents were still growing, they were also still learning. But they would teach me one thing, but I never, I wouldn't see them doing it. And we say don't get angry, but then everybody's home, where all we see is fights. And so all of these things kind of really used to bug me. And so I decided that, this is not for me. And so I started moving away. At the same time, some of my friends would come with me to the University of Michigan. They started the Jain Student Association at the University of Michigan. And they asked me to be a part of it. And I said, you guys do it, I want no part of this. But then, I ended up going to India after my first year of college, during the summer. And my mama saw that this was happening. And so he took me to go visit one sadhu who could speak English. And he said, whatever questions or doubts you have, you can speak with him and you can, hopefully he can give you some answers. And so I sat down with that sadhu Bhagwant. I sat for 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and I, argued with him, this is wrong, this is hypocrisy, this is contradictory, this, whatever it was, whatever came to mind, I spoke with him. He gave me his answers very, nicely. And at the end, I said, that you do you, I'll do me. So that sadhu's older sadhu, Guru Bhagwant, was Panyas Viragata Vijay Maharaj Sahib, who doesn't understand English. See, what like Nishit Bhai said, nothing in common. I told you the story. Very little formal education. He spent his time, his adolescent time doing manual labor. I barely had to lift a fork at home. Right? I was so pampered, comparatively. He doesn't know English. He's never experienced the culture of the West. Nothing in common. But he calls me over. He realizes that there's don't talk about philosophy or religion with this person. And so he just talks to me normally. What are you doing? What are you studying? What are your goals in life? How do you think you'll be happy? And he realizes that I like to sing. And so he teaches me one line of Astavan, which I really, really loved. And so he says, if you want to learn the next line, right, come tomorrow. They're very smart. And so for 10 days, I would go and visit him every day. And in those 10 days, nothing about, dharma or religion. Just how do you be a good person? How do you be happy? How do you be a virtuous person? What does it actually mean? How do you deal with situations? And so I felt that connection with him, even though I had no background with him. Again, he's speaking in very fluent Gujarati, and whatever little Gujarati I know, I'm trying to communicate. But many times, the communication doesn't happen through language. Communication happens through the love that's passed through that. Where it happens. And so I felt that more than him necessarily speaking to me, what was more important to me was that he was listening to me. And so he was understanding who I am. And based on that, he was, his messaging was very, very catered based on what he thought I was, what he realized that I was. And so I come back to the US. I almost forget about him. Because I'm back in college, things are going the way they were. I became the captain of the RAS team. I had so many other responsibilities, and there were some things that also happened personal, through which I became really depressed. I started feeling a lot of pressure, and so I was, very, very close to feeling like I would become suicidal. And at that point, none of my roommates could help me, my friends couldn't help me, my parents couldn't help me, my son, right? So nobody in my community could help me. And I didn't know what to do. And at that point, somebody suggested, why don't you go talk to that sadhu who you had met? I said, might as well give it a try, last ditch effort. Again, I was just like you, where I have nothing in common with him. So would he really be able to help me? Because the problems that I'm facing are, what we call first world problems somewhat. So how would he have, any idea? And yet, I sent him a message, I told him my situation. And his response was so amazing. It was, he catered his response for each different situation I was dealing with. He gave me, really exact ways of how to deal with, those specific people, those specific situations, those specific problems. And so the problem that I was, the pressure and that I was feeling for 2 months, within 2 weeks disappeared. And it disappeared so well that I was confident that if I was to face the same thing again in the future, and I've come pretty close to similar things again as well, right? But they haven't phased me even a little bit. And so at that point I realized that he has something, right? That him sitting thousands of miles away can help someone sitting in a completely different world. So that built my confidence in him. In a way I was beginning to make him my guru, but still it wasn't official, maybe you can call it yet. But then every time I go to India, every summer, I would stay with him. I would visit him for maybe 5 days, 1 week, and get a little bit that I could. Fast forward to graduation. Right before graduation, I go to India. My mama has done a Chari Palasan, the walking songs. And so I go there for 3 days. Gurudev, it's his Nishra, so he's the one, he's the one of the sadhus, main sadhus there. And so I'm walking with him, and he learns that I like to hike. And so he asked me, he said, "You like to hike?" "Yeah." Sadhus, we also hike. But we just call it Bihar. What is it? It's nothing, it's just backpacking, right? And so he said, "If you like to hike, why don't you come hike with us?" And it was really attractive. Again, I had gone that connection with him. Up to this point, it's been 4 years, he's never once told me I need to change my habits, I need to do something different. All he's done is talk to me, give me ideas, tell me stories, ways to inspire me to make my own changes. And so I go and I live with them now for 2 months, and I do Vihar with them. In Rajasthan, 110, 114 degrees, we're walking. And I saw so many difficulties that we faced. Once we got stuck in a jungle where just a few years prior, some Sadhuji Bhagwans had actually been murdered in those jungles. And we got lost in those jungles that night. And yet, never once did I see my Guru worried. Never once did I see him freak out. We reached a village. 2 Sadhu Bhagwans, including my Guru, get dehydration. There's no even cell service in that village. I have to walk almost half a kilometer to the top of a hill so that I can call the nearby village and ask for an ambulance. And so for 2 to 3 hours in 110 degrees, they're just sitting in the room suffering. What we might see as suffering, but for him, not even one change in his face. And not only that, he was giving me confidence because I was freaking out, but he was making me calm. Most of us were opposite. When we freak out, we make sure everyone else around us freaks out. And then when we're happy something good happens to us, we want to keep that to ourselves. And so, but I saw that. And these things, like my mom said, I wasn't always older, but when you see those things, they actually register in your mind much more concretely. So I come back. I go to work. Now I'm not only just half an hour away from work, I'm 4.5 hours away from home, which means even more freedom. And now I have money, which means there was no weekend that I wasn't traveling. I would fly to the East Coast or the West Coast, drive to Chicago, somewhere or the other. But there was no weekend that I really stayed in Indianapolis where I worked. Yes, things were going amazing. And then I got comfortable. And the danger with comfort, many times, is that comfort breeds expectation. If things have been going the way they are for 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 8 months, that's good. But then we start to expect that they will continue to go in that way. And the moment that expectation breaks, and anyone who's gotten married, right, we call it the honeymoon period, right? As soon as that expectation breaks, you start to get disturbed. The same thing happened to me. I got into a car accident. Somebody, rear-ended me. I wasn't injured, luckily. My car was barely damaged, like a dent, but that they were able to fix that dent in less than a week. But then I have to call the insurance lady, I have to call her every day because, they don't know how to do their jobs or whatever. And so I used to start getting angry, I started getting disturbed. See, the actual situation that happened, that accident and whatever, it was a few hours thing. It was a few hours deal. So a few hours of disturbance externally caused days and weeks and almost months of disturbance within. And at that time, I also read a book, as my mom also mentioned, called Jailer. Anyone here has read Jailer? really less people. Sangma, make sure whoever is leading the sung, whoever is leading the elder Pachala, Jailer, I highly suggest Jailer as one of the first books you should read. And it's available in Hindi, Gujarati, English, if you're South Indian, Telugu and Tamil also. So I read that book, and part of that book, there was one thing that really stuck with me. Right? In it, Acharya Bhagwan, Abhishek Sahib, he says a very good point, that any situation that occurs is like a spark. It creates a spark in your brain. And now your mind has two options. Your mind can either be like a tanker of water or a tanker of gasoline. Right? A tanker of water or a tanker of gasoline. What happens if your mind is like a tanker of gasoline and that spark hits your mind? Explosion, right? Or what happens if your mind is like a tanker of water? Nothing. But it's really easy, easier said than done, right? How do you make your mind like water? Do you just take a shower? Right? Put some water in your head? It takes practice, but I didn't know. Theoretically, a lot of sense. Practically, I have no idea what to do. And that was the time that I again started thinking about the life that I had witnessed of my guru. And during around that same time, one of the other Dikshartis from our son, she'd come back for the last time to the US, and so she came to our home, and I got to sit down with her. And her name was Heta Didi, who is now Hitat Marika Shiji Maharaj Sahib, so she's my mom's guru. So now you can imagine, we've had 6 Dikshas in our Sangh. Not only that, 5 of those Dikshas are all from the same friend group. And not only that, we've now started our 2nd generation. But she had come, and I sat down with her. And I told her, this is what I'm experiencing. I'm seeing this difference between I know what to do, but I'm not sure how to do it. And I know who knows how to do it, because I've seen my Guru Bhagans, I've seen the Sadhu Bhagans actually practically apply this theory. And so she convinced me to go and stay with them and get those answers. And so I quit my job. I go to India for 9 months, and I spend that time, I'm studying whatever, Guruji asked me to study, but my main job during that time was to observe and to understand what actually gives them those virtues, that ability that they have, what gives them that positivity, what gives them that peace, that satisfaction. And one of the things that I got from that, once cold morning, 4:30 in the morning in Rajasthan, we were doing Bihar, and my guru turns to me and he says, Rishi, do you know the purpose of life? And I said, there are many people who have lots of different, ideas of purpose, what the purpose of life is, but why don't you tell me? And so he gives me 2 lines. The first thing he tells me is the purpose of life is gunoni vriddhi. Gun means virtue. Vriddhi is to increase or to strengthen. So strengthen your virtues. Does anybody know what virtues are? Can anybody tell me?
Virtues are like Jain practices.
Jain practices? Anyone else? Anyone know how do you define a virtue?
Quality.
Quality? Quality of soul. That's too abstract. Something else. Something. Good habits. Shama. How about this? Is intelligence a virtue?
No.
Who says yes? Raise your hand. See, a virtue is a quality which necessarily brings happiness. The stronger that virtue, the more developed that virtue, the happier that person becomes. By rule. There is no exception. So now, let me ask you again. Is intelligence a quality?
No.
Yes? Are intelligent people more happier? Are they
No.
necessarily happier?
No.
No. Right? How many people know of IIT? Right? In India. They also have the highest rate of what? Suicide. They're the smartest people in India, and they commit the highest rate of suicide. So is intelligence it's a good quality, yes, but is it a virtue? Is somebody who can keep their mind stable in different situations, versus someone who's always getting excited in different situations, who will always be happier. Stable-minded, that's samta. So samta is a virtue, it's a gun. Someone who can control their senses, control their urges, versus someone who has, will indulge in anything and anything that comes in their way, comes in their life. Any vices, any drugs, any sort of sensory pleasures. Who will be happier in the long run? Who will be healthier? Who will be mentally more healthy? Who will be physically more healthy? Person who has control of their senses. That's called Sanyam. The Sanyam is a virtue. So, first step, increase your virtues. Second step, the opposite, decrease your faults. Right? So what are faults? Those qualities that will necessarily also make you unhappy. So is intelligence a fault? It's also not a fault, right? So intelligence falls beyond those things. So there's virtues and there's faults. Increase your virtues, decrease your virtues. This is what he told me. When he told me at that time, I had no idea what he was talking about. It took me almost 5 years to decode what he meant. But that's the level, that I kept thinking about it. Even to this day, the more and more I think about just these 2 lines, the more and more that I learn, the more that I, take out of this. But what he gave me was a framework for life. What he actually gave me was dharma. Because dharma at that point I realized is something which is not something that you relegate, right? That you keep just for the weekend, just for the night, just for the temple, right? Or just for the morning. Dharma is how you make each and every decision in your life. How you walk, how you talk, what you eat, what you drink, what you wear, what friends do you have, where do you go, how do you travel. Every single decision, small or big, that you make in your life, that framework is called dharma. And so the framework he gave was very easy. It became something that I practice even to this day. Every decision that I make, is it going to either increase my virtues or decrease my faults? And you can balance, you can, put that on a weigh scale. I make this decision, where am I getting more benefit? Because again, decreasing your faults and increasing your virtues also means you're increasing your happiness, right? Your peace, your satisfaction. And so every decision that I make, where am I going to get the maximum benefit? Where will I be the happiest at the end of that decision? And that's how I make every single decision. And so I came back after those 9 months. And now I'm again living at home. Then COVID comes, and so I moved back to Michigan. And now I've become, because of the alert group and the things that we did, I start to become also somewhat of a leader in the Sangh. But even at that point, when I was thinking about, because we think, well, if we're a leader, right, sometimes we have to make decisions, sometimes we have to get angry, we have to do, this and that. And the way we think about it is for the good of the Sangh, right? So even if it's bad for me, if it's going to be the greater good. But my Guruji was very, very clear with me. He said, if you yourself are not growing spiritually, if you're not improving yourself day to day while being a leader, while leading whatever different things that you're doing, then you're not fit. Then you need to stop that work and you first have to work on yourself. And so there were times that I had to step down, I had to step back, because I realized that maybe I have not yet improved my habits. I have not yet improved my anger or my ego. And so I would speak to my guru, tell him, and I would make that decision that, maybe for 6 months I need to step away, work on that issue, and now I'm fit to come back. And that was what I did for 5 years. Now, I've come back. My parents are also, getting worried about wedding. And I myself am not sure. And so my mom, with her, has an amazing idea. Why don't you go to Ubdan? Because, see, my mom has been very clear. She didn't mention this in her speech, but she was very clear with me. She said, Rishi, if you get married, in none of your photos will you see me smiling in the wedding photos. If you take Diksha, though, I will be in the middle of the street, all the way in the front, dancing. And so her hope was that I do Ubdan, and what they say that Ubdan is practice for Diksha, and so most people will get who are kind of on the fence. Usually decide for Diksha after doing Updan. And so, what do you think happened after 10 days? I got Pav, right? For marriage. Everyone is shocked, right? My mom is shocked. She's like, this is completely opposite of what I was expecting. But I come back. But I have, before that, so I have to go for Updan. I'm working. It's in December, which for Salesforce is holiday season, which is a very heavy season. And I have to take 60 days off. It's 47 days of Updan and then a few days here and there for travel and resting and, recuperating. Now, how do I ask my managers for 2 months off during the busiest time? Right, we're a smaller team, there's only 5 or 6 of us engineers, which means if I go, then that means way more pressure on their heads. And so me and Nishit Bhai, one weekend we sit down and we create a presentation. How me doing Updan will benefit the company. And so on Monday I go and I sit with my manager and I say, I need 60 days off. Initial, he's very shocked. And I said, don't worry, I have this presentation, I hope I can convince you. But he immediately says, don't worry. Actually, I don't need to see your presentation. I will give you 60 days off and that too paid. Due to company policy, he can only give me half the time paid, but still he lets me go for 2 months. Not only is my manager okay, my entire team is completely okay with me going. And so I do Updan, I come back. So I got, not Diksha Bhav, I got the opposite. But I come back and I talk to my manager and I ask him, why? Why did you let me? When you knew there was going to be so much pressure, so much more work, why did you let me go? And his response was very simple. He said, Rishi, I know you, I know your character. I've seen you these last, year and a half that we've worked together, and I know 100% that anything that you'll do in your life will be beneficial to you and to those around you. And so you didn't have to convince me the presentation. I knew from your character, I knew by who you are, that it will definitely be beneficial to our company. And that really spoke to me because I never realized that how much our character, how much how strong we adhere to our values, what influence it can have on those people who have no, idea about what Jainism is or any of those things. Because again, that same manager, he's not Jain, he's Christian, he's Tamil, he has no idea, he's never heard of Jainism other than that's the religion that I follow. And yet when I told him I'm leaving now to take Diksha, he was by far the happiest person in the world. So now we're, in the other path, the marriage path. But still, now I started teaching Pathshala. So who are high school kids? Who's in the high school? Who are high school? You guys know high school kids? Older? So I started teaching your class in Michigan. And I would tell I always very clear in my classes. The main message I always try to pass is that know the difference between true happiness and temporary happiness. Temporary happiness which is dependent on external situations and things and materials. And true happiness, which is independent of all of those things. True happiness, which comes from those, starts with V. Virtues. But then, I started thinking that I'm telling them this, right? I'm talking to them about the difference and that we should always strive for true happiness. And we have that saying, right? Practice what you preach. But where am I practicing it? Maybe they're seeing a little bit, me doing it, a little bit they're seeing that. But really I'm not actually showing them what that right path is. And so even for that, I decided, even if it's for my 20 students, right? Just as a mother will sacrifice her life for her children, right? A father will sacrifice his life for his family. I said, and this is what my guru had taught me, is that even for a single person, right? If you need to sacrifice your entire worldly life and you take Diksha, and if that's going to help their life, save their life, right? Their soul, then it's worth it. And so I decided, even for my 20 students, if I have to give up my entire worldly existence, I'll be more than happy to do it if it'll show them the right path. There were many other reasons, but I decided that no, right? I had that framework, right? Where increase their virtues the most, that's the decision you take. Now I have to decide, samsar, right, the worldly life, or sanyam, the renunciate life. Where do I get the highest opportunity, the maximum opportunity to increase my virtues, to actually work on myself? See, the only difference between someone who takes Diksha and us is that they've only made a singular decision that I want to dedicate my entire life, every hour, every minute of my life, to working on myself. And what we do is we keep that for, we keep that for just a part of our life because we have so many other distractions. And so I decided that if I want to actually, reach the limits of this goal, this purpose that my Guruji has given me, then the only life is Diksha life. And so it was a very simple, cut and dry decision, right? Just this way or this way. This way. This is more maximum profit. And that's it. I decided for Diksha. I go back to India. The rest of the story you guys know. My Diksha is June 8th, as we already said. 6th, 7th, 8th June, we have a 3-day celebrations. I highly encourage you to all attend. The entire Sangh has my invitation, but especially for the youth. We plan on having as many sessions as we can in either English or at least 50% English or somehow, translations in English. But they will have ample opportunities to understand, to learn what true spirituality is. Not just Jain Dharma, but true spirituality, true life, how to build a life purpose, how to execute on your life purpose, how to actually be happy. We hope to cater the entire Diksha events in that way. So especially for the youth, we already have commitments from 30 to 40 YJ UK students, many who are 4th generation, who've never been to India, but will be coming in the heat of June for the Diksha. So, please attend. If I've said anything that hurt anyone's feelings, one more thing, part of Varshidan, for the youth between the ages of 13 and 30. I have a set of books, they're all in English. You can collect them during the Varshidan session on this over here. A few of them, I'll talk about a few of them. This is for everyone. This card everyone will be given. It's a photo of Mahavir Swami Bhagwan. It's made by the lead digital artist for the Marvels in India. And he's not Jain. He's from Chennai, but he met some sadhus. He learned about Mahavir Swami Bhagwan's sadhana, right? His spiritual practices during the 12.5 years before he got Kevalgnan. He learned about that practice, and he did his own sadhana for 1 month. He's an artist, but he still gave an entire month just so he could make this image, because he decided that if I want to make an image, if I want to know what he actually looked like, what his smile was like, what his eyes were like, what his posture was like, then as in any artist, right, what you experience yourself is what comes out on the page. And so he spent 1 month in sadhana, and he took 6 months to make this image. And so each one of you, I promise you, you look into the eyes, you'll definitely feel something. And there's also some messages in the back and the front. You can read them when you get it. When it comes to books, one of the most transformative sutra, or things that I read, was Pancha Sutra. How many of the youth have you heard about Pancha Sutra? Probably we don't teach about that much in Pachala, but it changed my life because it taught me how to be a good human being. It taught me how do I actually work on myself. I learned about increase your virtues, decrease your faults, but how do I actually do that? This actually gave me a 3-step process. But I read mine, the one that I read, the translation was in Gujarati. But I decided that, I couldn't find any good English translation. And so especially for the youth, especially for those who want to, follow that path, with the blessings of my Guru Maharaj, I translated direct translation in English, which is this small book. But many times direct translations don't give the full picture. And so I also wrote this book called Entry Pass, right, which is basically a deeper context of Panchasutra, what each word means, how it actually applies to your life. So we have a bundle of these. And then my most favorite is this novel set. It's called Benaka. Part 1, Part 2, it's pretty heavy. But this book, the Sadhu Bhagwan, mostly they don't write fictional novels, but this Sadhu Bhagwan wrote, for the first time that I know in history, a fictional novel. And it's been so effective. He has 250 letters of people who stopped themselves from suicide after reading this book. He has 50 letters of young people who escaped bad relationships or from making bad decisions in their life after reading this book. 20 to 30 sadhus and sadhu bhagwans who made the decision to take Diksha after reading this book. And he has 10 mumukshus, right? Someone on the path of Diksha who are not Jain, but they read this book and that's how they got on that path. So this is a hugely inspirational book. We also made sure we translated it into American English, so you'll see it says US edition, because many times we understand that Indian English doesn't always sit well. So, and there are many more books and many more novels. So you only if you're between the ages of 13 and 30 will give it to you. If you come for your kids, bring your kids with you. Otherwise, we'll not give it to adults or to parents. I don't think there's nothing else to say. But please, once again, if you can attend my Diksha, if your students want to connect with me in any way, they're more than happy to. They're more than feel free. Anything else? Thank you to the sun.